Losing my child to sickness broke something in me that I didn't know could break. One moment I was praying with all the strength a mother can muster, and the next I was holding a silence so heavy it bent my whole world. My days blurred into grief, doubts, and the deep ache that settles in a woman's life after unbearable loss. I kept asking God how to breathe again without feeling like I was betraying the love I carried. In those first days, I moved slowly, as if walking through thick smoke. Family responsibilities circled me, but my heart felt too fragile to meet them. Anxiety pressed against my ribs, and burnout crept into every corner of my mind. Contrition mixed with exhaustion as I whispered small prayers just to stay grounded. I held on to scripture, believing that somehow redemption could still reach a mother whose soul felt torn apart. People tried to comfort me, yet their kindness often floated past me like echoes. I was overwhelmed by the difficulties piling up, my attention scattered, my spirit trembling, my body numb. Every ordinary task felt impossible. Doubts haunted me. Did I pray enough? Did I notice the signs? Could love ever have changed anything? These questions clung to me, filling the air around me like fog that refused to lift. Many afternoons, I sat alone with my Bible open on my lap, unable to read more than a line. The quiet became my prayer when words failed. Be still and know that I am God. I repeated it like a heartbeat, hoping it would steady my shaking soul. I didn't feel strong or brave, but I kept showing up in the silence, trusting that God meets us even when our faith feels thin and trembling. Slowly, I learned that grief doesn't vanish, it reshapes. Honesty became my first step toward healing. I let myself cry, let myself rest, let myself bring the rawness of my heart to God without pretending. Losing my child changed everything. My faith, my family, my attention, my understanding of love. And even though the pain stayed, a quiet hope began to rise, carrying me forward into the next morning of this long journey. Mornings became a quiet battlefield for my heart. Before I even opened my eyes, the weight of loss settled on my chest like a second pillow. I'd lie there, listening to the stillness of the house, trying to gather the courage to move. Anxiety always woke before I did, whispering doubts about the day ahead. I asked God for strength just to sit up, knowing that even simple routines now carried the heaviness of grief. In the kitchen, the morning light felt almost confrontational. It poured through the window as if insisting life was still happening, even when I felt stuck in yesterday's pain. I held my coffee like an anchor, hoping it would steady my thoughts. My attention drifted between memories, responsibilities, and the quiet ache reshaping my woman's life. Burnout lingered from the moment I stood, reminding me how fragile healing. Before touching anything else, laundry, messages, dishes, I opened scripture. I wasn't looking for answers. I was looking for breath. One morning, the verse, "My grace is sufficient for you," wrapped around my trembling heart. Weakness no longer felt like failure. It felt like the only honest place I could meet God. I whispered small prayers, trusting that redemption can rise even from mornings soaked in doubt and sorrow. With time, mornings softened, not because the pain faded, but because I stopped fighting the stillness. I learned to let the quiet hold me instead of fearing it. The sunlight on the floor, the hum of the kettle, the slow rhythm of my breathing, these tiny mercies became signs that God had not abandoned me. In those moments, I sensed a fragile peace beginning to take root, steadying me for what each day required. Some mornings still break me, tears rising before I reach the door. Others offer a small strength I didn't expect, but every morning invites me to choose honesty over pretending, to admit my doubts, my struggles, my need for grace. And in that honesty, healing breathes. Mornings have become the threshold where I meet God again, tired, hopeful, trembling, ready to take one more step toward the life waiting beyond my grief. Dealing with family after the loss felt like walking through a house filled with echoes. Everyone loved me, yet no one knew what to say. Their concern warmed me and overwhelmed me at the same time. Some wanted to talk about everything. Others avoided the subject entirely. I stood in the middle, trying to balance their needs with my own fragile heart, hoping love would hold us together through the difficulties. I noticed how grief changed our rhythms. Small misunderstandings felt heavier, simple conversations carried tension, and even silence had a different texture. Sometimes I burned out trying to be patient, trying to give attention when all I wanted was quiet. Doubts would rise, asking if I was failing them. Yet deep down I knew we were all struggling, each of us wrestling with sorrow in our own hidden way. There were days when I snapped without meaning to, my exhaustion spilling into the room before I could breathe. Regret always followed quickly. I'd whisper, "Create in me a clean heart," as I apologized, hoping they could see the contrition behind my trembling voice. Slowly, these honest moments softened us. We learned to forgive faster, to speak more gently, and to recognize pain, even when it disguised itself as irritation. Healing came through small gestures, someone making my tea, another folding the laundry, a quiet hug in the hallway. None of us said it out loud, but we were rebuilding something tender together. These small acts of love felt like redemption, stitched into ordinary routines. They reminded me that family isn't held together by perfection, but by steady kindness offered in the middle of sorrow and doubt. As time moved forward, our home found a gentler rhythm. We laughed again, sometimes through tears, sometimes freely. We learned to check on one another, to slow down, to listen with real presence. Dealing with family became less about avoiding hurt and more about choosing connection. And in that choice, something sacred grew, a quiet strength that carried us through the grief we shared and the hope we were slowly reclaiming together. Going back to church felt like stepping into a place I loved and feared at the same time. The familiar incense, the candles, the soft murmurs of prayer, all of it stirred something deep in me. Yet I carried anxiety in my chest, unsure how my grief would sit among so many hopeful faces. I slipped into a corner pew, hoping no one would ask questions I wasn't ready to answer, praying God would meet me quietly. As the service began, I felt the weight of my woman's life press against the silence. The hymns sounded different, now gentler, almost aching. Every word touched the raw edges of my heart. I kept my head bowed, whispering small prayers for redemption, asking God to hold my doubts without shaming them. Being there with my family beside me felt grounding, yet overwhelming, as if faith and sorrow were learning to breathe together. When it came time to light a candle, my hands trembled. I placed the flame before God, letting it speak what my voice couldn't. Contrition rose in me like a slow, tied regret for my impatience, my burnout, my fear. But instead of punishment, I sensed gentleness. It didn't erase the difficulties I carried, but it softened them. In that small glow, I felt the first hint of strength returning to my spirit. During the sermon, my attention wavered between the pastor's words and my own memories. Some lines cut deeply, others felt like balm. I realized that church wasn't asking me to be whole. It was inviting me to be honest. I let a few tears fall, not hiding them this time. Around me, no one stared. No one judged. It felt like God was saying, You can bring your brokenness here, all of it. As I left the building, something inside me felt steadier, not healed, but steadier. Church didn't take away the grief, it simply gave it a place to breathe. I walked out carrying a quiet hope, the kind that grows slowly, like light easing into a dark room. I knew I'd still face doubts, difficulties, and long days ahead, but I also knew this sacred space would hold me while I learned to stand again. Returning to life felt almost impossible. At first, I moved through my days quietly, unsure of where I fit now that grief had changed everything. But slowly, small moments began calling me back. Sunlight on the floor, a familiar laugh, the soft strength in God's whisper. I realized life wasn't asking me to forget, only inviting me to breathe again, one gentle step at a time. I noticed healing in unexpected places, a smile I didn't force, a task I finished without breaking down, the way my heart didn't tremble every time I remembered. I still carried anxiety, but it no longer ruled me. I still felt the ache, but it no longer swallowed every thought. Life was returning in fragments, and I welcomed each fragment as a tender sign of grace. There were days when doubts tried to pull me back into the shadows, whispering that moving forward meant losing something sacred. But I learned that carrying love into the future doesn't betray the past. Redemption grows when we allow hope and sorrow to share the same space. I began opening the windows again, letting in air, letting in light, letting in the possibility of joy. Family became part of this return. Their laughter, their kindness, even the messy moments reminded me that I was still needed, still loved, still woven into their lives. We created new rhythms, simple meals, soft conversations, quiet evenings. These small routines didn't erase the difficulties, but they held me, teaching me that life could be gentle, even while remaining incomplete. I also found strength in serving others again, not in grand ways, but in small acts of attention, a text, a meal, a listening ear. Helping someone else softened my own pain, reminding me that broken hearts can still bless others. Each act lifted a little of the burnout, showing me that compassion grows deeper when watered by suffering. One morning I realized I was looking forward to something. A walk, a cup of coffee, a quiet evening. That single moment startled me. It felt like my soul exhaled after months of holding its breath. Life didn't rush back. It unfolded. It stretched, then paused, then stretched again, as if God Himself was guiding me gently into a new beginning shaped by both sorrow and grace. Returning to life didn't mean leaving my child behind. It meant carrying their memory with courage instead of collapse. It meant trusting that God could weave redemption into the broken pieces of my story. And as I step into what comes next, I do so with a trembling but hopeful heart, knowing that life, even marked by loss, can still be beautiful, sacred, and worth living.